They're hitting me in order to try and pick up something in their polls. The thing I'm most honored about is every single person that went after me, including Jeb Bush, who's down, boom. Every single person that went after me has gone way down. And I'm very honored by that. And that's what the country needs. The country needs a leader that when the country gets hit, we're going to come out on top, not keep going down, because we're going down. Our country is going down.
Well, many political experts have said time and time again that Donald Trump will fade, but so far he's holding up in the polls. He is still the GOP frontrunner. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton still on top of the Democrat race despite her email troubles. So could we see a Trump-Clinton showdown in the general election? Let's bring in our political insiders. Pat Cadell will be joining us shortly. We're trying to get the signal through to him. We also have Doug Schoen, former pollster for President Bill Clinton and a Fox News contributor, and John LeBoutillier, former Republican congressman from New York. And again, we're going to try to get Pat for you. But let's take a look right now at the latest Fox News GOP poll. Trump leading at 24%, but Ben Carson right behind him at 23%. Ted Cruz is third, Marco Rubio fourth. So, Doug, will it be Trump versus Hillary?
Well, at this point, Patty Ann, it's looking increasingly like that could be the case. There are state polls from Nevada, South Carolina, New Jersey, Connecticut that show Trump with a 10, 15, in some instances, 20-point lead. The latest New Hampshire poll shows a similar result. We are now in a situation where Trump is the clear front runner in virtually every poll that has come out. He's ahead. And candidly, the American people are angry. The Republicans are showing a level of distrust and disgust, so that the quote that you just played from Donald Trump really reflects, I think, the underlying anger that the voters have on the Republican side, and indeed the Democratic side, with the political establishment. We could have two candidates with negative ratings of close to 60% going into the general election if what we've seen this week holds true.
Very strange election possibly coming. Another national poll also puts Trump in first place, but that poll by Rutgers has Marco Rubio in second place, tied with Ben Carson. Ted Cruz still in the top four. That's two national polls showing Trump, Carson, Rubio, and Cruz as the top four. John, what do you make of that?
Yeah, well, whatever poll you want, Trump is clearly the front runner.
Yes.
And we need to discuss for a minute, the four of us, why is he the front runner? When 4 months ago, a huge majority of Republicans said, I would never vote for Trump. That's done a complete reversal. Now a majority of them like him, and a good plurality, 30% on average, say they'll vote for him. Number one, people are so disgusted with everything to do with politics that they look upon a rich guy as incorruptible, so honest that he's willing to say things that tick off the establishment. And the Reagan line, no pale pastels. Does Donald Trump sit there and work on words to try to shade what he thinks? No, he just says it. And it's refreshing. Now, the only issue is, will it be refreshing in 5 months from now? Will it wear off? Will this blunt approach continue to have appeal or fade out? I think it'll have appeal myself.
All right. Let's take a look now at some of the state polls. First, we have one in South Carolina, a CNN poll showing Trump again in the lead, followed by Carson, and then Rubio and Carly Fiorina. And in Connecticut, a Quinnipiac poll, the same top four, a different order. Trump again, followed by Carson, and then Carly Fiorina and Rubio. And the same top four in Nevada, according to a CNN poll. Trump, then Carson, a strong second there, and then Carly Fiorina and Rubio. Do we have Pat Cadell? Hi, Pat. What's your take on this?
Well, I think it shows that Trump is further ahead in these into the top four states than he is even nationally. The press has been trying to bury him all along, and just like they, want to resurrect Hillary, so they can't stand not being able to do that. But I think the question now is, I think there's, as Doug said, there's a real chance we have to really consider that he will be the nominee for the Republicans and she's going to be the nominee for the Democrats. And this creates quite an interesting situation because both have trustworthy problems, although hers are much worse. As Doug said, they both have high negatives. and they both are considered not caring about people like individual voters, yet they're both seen as strong leaders. And what I believe that may do, if that's the case, is leave a vacuum so huge that we may now really see a candidate coming in to the from the outside. But the advantage Trump has over her, remember, is he is the outsider.
And Pat, let me just say about that, because I raise this a lot everywhere I go, and people say, oh, no, there's no room now for another outsider. We've already had this shock of Trump and Carson and Fiorina outsiders. Right. But this is such an odd year.
Yes.
Why would we not suspect that more odd things are yet to happen as we heat up? Now, I remind people, Ross Perot did not even start the Larry King weekly escapade until February of '92. By June, he's in first place.
Yeah.
So that was 25 years ago when the country was pretty tranquil.
And that was a period. And that was a period, as John just said, where things were not as bad as they are. We can measure right now the alienation in this country that's driving this outsider instinct is at almost 70% of the electorate.
Yeah.
At least 60 and as much as 70. And the mainstream view, the world view of the Washington and the mainstream media is about 30%. There's plenty of room for more of this to come.
Let's move on to our next topic. Hillary Clinton will be on the Hill this week, testifying before the House Select Committee investigating the 2012 Benghazi terror attacks. This week on NPR, a Republican, Congressman Richard Hanna of New York, said, quote, a big part of this investigation was designed to go after an individual, Hillary Clinton. John, you're shaking your head.
Well, first of all, let me say that Frank Wolf, who was the congressman from Virginia who pushed to have this select committee, who was in my class in Congress, is a wonderful man. He's the guy that pushed and pushed and pushed to get Boehner to create this committee. And I can assure you, in Frank Wolf's mind, this was not to trash Hillary. It was to get all the answers that we've never gotten on Benghazi. These two congressmen, Kevin McCarthy and Congressman Hanna from here in New York, are the biggest idiots I've ever heard of. They have ruined the credibility of this committee when this chairman, I think Trey Gowdy, has been excellent for a year and a half in not letting politics into it. She now has the defense she'll use all week and on Thursday. It's just politics, it's politics. You're just out to get me. Your own colleagues said you're out to get me.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Let's listen to Mrs. Clinton in her own words. I just want to roll her latest comment on this.
What are you expecting and how are you preparing?
I really don't know what to expect. I think it's pretty clear that whatever they might have thought they were doing, they ended up becoming a partisan arm of the Republican National Committee with an overwhelming focus on trying to, as they admitted, drive down my poll numbers.
All right, John, as already mentioned, that the House Select Committee on Benghazi is headed by Congressman Trey Gowdy of South Carolina. He's a former prosecutor. He says, look, this is about finding the facts. Clinton was the Secretary of State at the time, so of course there's a focus on her. Doug, what about it?
Well, look, this is an opening that Hillary Clinton desperately needed because there are a lot of questions that the American people and the committee want answered. What did the State Department know? What did she know? How did she react? How did she deal with the information she and her staff was getting? Those are still questions that, despite all the hearings that have gone on, remain yet to be fully answered. And I say that not as a partisan Democrat, because I am supporting and would like to see Hillary Clinton elected, but I say that as an analyst trying to be fair. There are also questions about her emails, which will come up in the context of Libya, Sidney Blumenthal, and this hearing. But candidly, I think what John and Pat said is exactly right. She has been able in the debate and in the Jake Tapper interview to turn this into an entirely partisan witch hunt because of the comments of Congressman Hanna and Congressman McCarthy. This is literally manna from heaven for her. She has benefited enormously and given her strong debate performance, Patty Ann, she is in a much, much improved position over where she was a week ago.
All right, so Pat, Mrs. Clinton keeps mentioning there were several other investigations, but Gowdy points out there were 7 eyewitnesses to the attack who were never questioned by any of these other investigations. Pat, do we know all we need to know about the attacks that killed these 4 Americans?
We still don't know. No, we don't. And let me just say, the first cover-up investigation at the State Department, the one that didn't interview her, the report was given over to Cheryl Mills to revise that piece of cover-up. Then you had several incompetent House hearings, including the one by Hal Richards, whose wife was a consultant on the embassy security, which basically found, oh, nothing went wrong. This is the first one that's gotten into the questions we need to know. What happened that night? We don't know what happened. Could they have saved them? And then we need to know, what was Hillary Clinton doing that night? Where was the President of the United States that night in terms of this? And finally, who came up? And she was the architect with Susan Rice of the cover-up story about the fake video that is the greatest lie in the history of American foreign policy. Now, somebody needs to answer that. Let me just say this about the Republicans. You know, Gene McCarthy once said, liberal Republicans shoot their own wounded. And I'll tell you now, I believe about conservative Republicans, they shoot their own in the back. It's unbelievable.
All right, we're going to have to take a break. A lot more to come. Political outsiders seem to be topping some of the latest polls. The big question now, how long can they hold on? And now that the Dems have had their first debate, our political insiders will explain why outsiders are still at the head of the pack or near it. Coming up.